bills. And when I'm saying things that make sense, if this is resonating, it's at a frequency that allows your higher self to meet you there and dissolve the bullshit. Hello, my name is Megan Michelle. Welcome to my channel. This is Higher Self Perspective. I'm going to be introducing this channel officially for the first time. I'm going to be reintroducing my podcast for the final time for the foreseeable future. I'm going to share a little about my journey over the last year, 2 years since quitting my corporate job, starting my own business, building a school bus, traveling around the country with my partner, sharing a twin bed, breaking down in Yellowstone for a week, starting businesses together, driving across the country in 3 days, sleeping in our car, moving to California with anything we could fit in the back of my boyfriend's Honda, sleeping in our car until we found an apartment, this apartment behind me, finding us finding an office space, the business taking off, my personal spiritual journey taking off and blossoming. And when I say taking off, I really mean just moving at a really fast pace constantly, and me reaching the point that I'm at now, which is ultimately stabilizing in a conscious flow of ascension through higher states of consciousness on a daily basis to expand my awareness and ultimately be able to serve this planet and be able to serve masses of people in a way that stimulates my desire, because I desire to create at a very fast pace. I love moving quickly. I realize that as a little girl, I was always encouraged to slow down, and it was not because I wasn't understanding or because I wasn't taking time to appreciate or have intention in what I was doing. I've learned as an adult by revisiting my childhood experiences that I've actually just always created and moved at a really fast pace. What this has meant for me growing up and in my adult life, ultimately as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to tie all of this back into the point of this episode today, introducing this channel, introducing my podcast, is that I've learned that I was always really, really skilled at learning things quickly, applying the techniques, making really practical shifts, making it real in my life instantaneously upon learning new information. I would hear new information, and it would almost be as if every time I heard new information, and this maybe didn't line up every single time, and not necessarily all information either. The information that I'm talking about specifically was information that I was seeking in my soul, maybe didn't realize it, or it was a question to something or a quest that I had in life, a mission I was trying to accomplish, a goal I was trying to achieve, a sports team I was trying to make, things like that. This was really specifically relevant to information that I knew that served me in whatever I was trying to accomplish in any relative situation. And I would receive that information and it would come to me how it would come to me. And I'll get to that part later. That's when we'll talk about psychic gifts and intuition and connection with yourself, your higher self, connection with the spirit world, the connection to like the Akashic records that I've had my whole life and haven't realized it, just the energetic experiences I've been able to understand that I was having as a small girl that I didn't realize just because those weren't the conversations that were being had around me. And ultimately tying all of that back together, when I would learn new information, I would simply just have the thought concept to apply to the actions I was already doing. And so I would be doing things, or I would know a skill, or I would know how to perform something that I didn't realize I knew how to perform. So for example, this is not necessarily applicable, but somebody would say, hey, do you know how to use a jackhammer? And I would be like, I don't know how to use a jackhammer. And then we'd be walking down the street and they would be like, oh, what's that thing? And I'm like, oh, drrr. And they're like, bro, you said you didn't know how to use a jackhammer. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was a jackhammer. Like, that's ultimately the best way. It makes me sound borderline, like it can almost make it sound stupid, but it's not that. It's that's what awareness is, and having certain thought concepts or certain structures of thought or ways for your beliefs to stack on one another, and ultimately finding out that the foundation of your beliefs are a little less stable than you realized is the catalyst for this type of radical realization. But it is only once that realization is made in an individual's mind. For example, if you've realized that the foundations of your beliefs and what you've been raised to believe or what you've been told to believe and inherently accepted as truth because you also weren't taught to question what you're told. If you grew up in a religious household of any format, right? Not just Christianity. I personally grew up in a Southern Baptist household, but with a lot of other things going on too. So religious programming was just like one sliver of the piece of the pie in my story, but it was a big part. And I think that religious programming plays a big part in everyone's story because society is programmed by religious propaganda. And that's why I've developed such a passion, and I didn't know it at the time, but I developed such a passion to understanding forbidden mysteries. And that was the very thing that has led me to understanding more of who I am, which allows me to soften and relax. And when I say soften and relax, I mean personally, for so much of my life, my defenses were up, not in necessarily a way that were visible to other people or even conscious to me or other people, meaning it wasn't things that I was actively doing in conversations, or I wasn't like actively trying to work with this understanding. But I would just realize all the time, so often, that things I would say would go right over people's heads. Sometimes this would happen at a bar. Sometimes this would happen on the phone with a friend, or just in so many different contexts. And even I started to notice this would happen between dynamics of people who were, in superior positions or roles or rankings than me. And this was when it got particularly interesting, especially on this side of my spiritual awakening. And I will talk about that and like the power dynamics of relationships and ego structures and unconscious power dynamics that play with ego structures. That's really the key piece, because a lot of people don't do this intentionally. It's the energies that have a hold of their conscious attention that are kind of holding the puppet strings. But again, we'll talk about that at another time. I'm really excited to talk about that. It runs perfectly in parallel with all of this. So I was realizing that a lot of things that I was saying was going over people's heads. Now, this could range from so many things. And there was never a common enough thread for me to make sense of it until I got far enough zoomed out from being in the matrix myself and being blocked from higher understanding because specifically of religious programming, not having it in my awareness, not having certain information in my awareness. And that brings me to this channel and this YouTube channel, my podcast, and everything that my life is about, what my mission and or my ministry, I'm still deciding what to call it, but what I am bringing to this planet, why I left my old life, why I radically changed everything about who I am in like virtually zero time at all. Hindsight, probably 3 years is like the biggest change, but myself, who I was a year ago, I started leaning into my divine feminine awakening in June or July of 2023. So started consciously leaning into this search for further truth that I didn't even realize was a quest for truth at the time. I simply just felt a call. I finally had words in my awareness. I finally had something brought into my awareness that gave me the texture of left brain logic truth that made sense, that my body liked, that my body validated for me. And it wasn't until I was able to connect between when I was given information and when my body said, yes, we like that information, or when my body said, no, we don't like that information. It took a while for me to understand those communication channels because, again, we are not encouraged to listen to our intuition. It's not even that we're not encouraged. Society is so programmed out of our intuition that these are not common topics. They're not brought into your awareness often enough for you to make the connections between the things that you're experiencing in your energetic body or your emotional body and developing your emotional intelligence. By the way, emotional intelligence is the ability to use your emotions to teach you about your experience, to ultimately enhance your experience. That's why you want to be emotionally intelligent, so you can learn how to enhance your experience through your emotions. But ultimately, emotional intelligence is understanding how your emotions are communicating with you personally, how to utilize your emotions. And then when it gets into the more mystical, magical side, the stuff that I teach, the priestess path, this full devotional lifestyle, multidimensional living, especially if you're in a soul-led business, it is using that in manipulating energy for a specific goal through the alchemization of emotions. And what that means is if you've had a traumatic experience in your life, choosing to tap into that energy of the opposite of what you want to then create the opposite of that. That's alchemy, that's magic. That's how things can happen in your life really quickly. When you're willing to go there, when you're willing to have the uncomfortable conversations, when you're willing to not go on a fourth date with a guy because of something small that could make you seem irrational for not going out with him again. It's being irrational. It's being irrational to people who are in the matrix and asleep, or who are not sober to their experience. And when I say sober to their experience, I mean the trueness and the vastness of what the human experience is here to bring to us. And so when you're in a space with people like that, and you're going to seem like the crazy one. You have to be willing to be seen like the crazy one until you remove yourself enough from whatever matrices you've been consumed in and by, and they're going to be different for you than they were for me, than the next person. We will often have a lot of similarities in those. Ultimately, we're going to have a lot of similarities in our unconscious blocks and unconscious truths. It will vary in how it has influenced us throughout our lives and continues to influence us, because remember, when you start taking a path down something because of a negative belief, there are then other things that form on top of that. So that's where these layers come from. But what I've seen is when you can address the root layer and make it make sense in your brain. I don't mean force it to make sense, but have somebody here like me, hello, that has made it make sense in their own body. Therefore, my beacon of energy that I'm casting out here to you to watch this is allowing your higher self in new ways to make it make sense for you on your behalf in the quantum field. So if you ever hear me say quantum healing, lightning medicine, that's what I mean. I mean, I'm extending my understanding to you and using words that your higher self is asking me to say. I'm allowing my higher self to speak over my tongue. My higher self is connected to your higher self. Therefore, the words that come out of my mouth are exactly what makes sense to your logical left brain that you've heard in your experience. And it specifically addresses the stories that you have made up in your own mind, or whoever's listening, whoever this is resonating with. And this is specifically only for the people who this is resonating with. What's happening is that the words that I'm using are addressing certain questions, doubts, situations, experiences that you've had in your life that you can relate the feeling and the moment and the memory of. Oh yeah, when that happened, my intuition felt good. And that's what my intuition's supposed to feel like. That's what it's supposed to feel like. Or when I set this boundary, or when I didn't call this guy back and he gaslit me into thinking X, Y, and Z. And you have to even really be self-aware to even understand that that was happening. But that's the thing. It builds and builds and builds. And when I'm saying things that make sense, if this is resonating, it's at a frequency that allows your higher self to meet you there and dissolve the bullshit. So that's what this channel is what I'm going to use it for. And it's taken me this whole journey, and I haven't been posting a lot of videos on YouTube. The first video I really consciously posted as a YouTube video and chopped up and edited and actually gave my, even a remote dash of my effort to. And I want to say this here. I don't say this a lot. I put very little effort into everything I do. Genuinely. I put as little effort as I can to get it done as best as I can with that little bit of effort that I want to give. And it's not because I want to. It's not because I'm so self-righteous that I think that I'm above these tasks. It's because I've allowed myself to only do things when I have the energy to do them. And if I don't have the energy to do things, I be. What do you do all day, Megan? This. I get dressed, got my fire going. I'll put a little clip up of my fire. I really clonked that, didn't I? Got my little fire going. I sit at my fire altar. I do magic. I meditate, but not in like the kind of meditation way. I do that too, but that's just been more recently. I've been coming back to style meditation to just revisit what's going on up there, because I've grown so much and my consciousness has upgraded so much that what's going on up here now is vastly different than what it was the last time I did that style of passive meditation. My practice for the last 6 or 7 months, 8 months, has been active meditation. For those who don't know me and are like really new here, maybe this is your first time ever experiencing me, by the way, hi. I'm coming in hot. I used to live in a school bus. I bought and tore down and rebuilt up a tiny school bus. When I say tiny, it's just short. It was very tall. It was like 10 feet tall, but 22 feet long, and like just a square box. And I took all the seats out, converted into a house, traveled the country some by myself. And then I met my partner. He came with me. We traveled all the way across the country, which is how we wound up here in Monterey. Long story. I'll tell that another time. If you're new and don't know the story, I'll explain that in a video where we can chat about that together. And because that whole thing is obviously a really magical part. But ultimately, I set off to just really figure something the fuck out that I didn't know I needed to figure out. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where it was leading me. I just stopped doing things the way that I guess I got to the point, that moment of realization that I mentioned earlier in this video, where you realize the foundation of your beliefs weren't even yours. And so it's not until you start questioning the surface level beliefs. Why do I use the shampoo that I use? Because my hairdresser told me to. Why did my hairdresser get told that? And you start realizing the root and the intention and the true force behind things, which is almost always money, greed, power, when you start questioning these surface level beliefs. And then you question the ones that are determining the unconscious things that create your experience. Like the unconscious, when I say projections, I mean like your consciousness, the part of your consciousness that projects what you see and experience, like a movie. So the film, right? The actual, the stuff that you don't have access to in your conscious awareness. Like, for example, you look outside, I see a tree, I see a camera in front of me. When you're looking at me, you see a woman, you see feathers. Those are things in your conscious awareness. Your unconscious, and I'm going to say this a lot in this video, I'm going to talk about that in another video, but I really am the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind, the roles that each one of these play. A lot of people want to go for the subconscious. The subconscious, reprogramming your subconscious mind is putting a Band-Aid on a suture across your neck, quite literally. And I know that's vulgar and grim, but that is the truth. Your subconscious mind is the automated giblets that you have been able to extract from your unconscious, that you're not quite ready to fully integrate into your life yet. And I'm really being cryptic about this. The subconscious is just the effect. Like it's just it's the effect, it's not the cause. And so the ultimate effect is the conscious, but the subconscious is what perpetuates anything, not good or bad. It doesn't perpetuate just bad things, because your subconscious can be used in your favor. My subconscious is in my favor. My subconscious now has programs running that automate my divinity. They automate me to be able to continuously, and when I say automate my divinity, I mean automate my assumption of, and my self-actualization of, and the manifestation of things that support and help and nurture my journey to fully embodying my higher self, fully embodying Sophia Christ consciousness, fully embodying who I need to be every single day and continue to become as this earth also evolves. I have to adapt to how things are shifting outside of me. And it's not, and your destiny and your purpose in life is not a linear path. And that's said very often. When I say that, it's not a linear path. It's not determined by you or anyone else. You didn't come here to say, like, this is exactly what's going to happen. You came here to say, I'm ready to fight for whatever happens. I'm ready to show up every single day, because every day is a new opportunity. It is an illusion to think that the history is destined to repeat itself, or that there is any sort of control over tomorrow by anyone. Who has the most probability to control things is whoever is able to influence the most people, really, because people generate energy, right? We are givers of life. We are creators of life. And so whoever has the biggest control over the population as far as beliefs and who's influencing the minds of the most people is ultimately who has control of the power. But that's not to say that that can't change in a day. The reason why it can't is that so many people think about having a conversation with someone who's a devout Christian, trying to explain to them something that is not that. It is just like, it's think about cults, right? How people never in a million years would see themselves in a cult, and people find themselves in cults every day. It's very subtle tactics, and the devil is smart, right? The devil. But it's not because the devil is smart, it's because we have this archetype. I said I was going to go into this in another video, and I'm just kind of like talking about all things conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. But I do want to finish this thought. We have that part of our mind that is not it is not Luciferian, which that word Lucifer has even been diluted to mean something, and it's been demonized, not diluted. It's been demonized to mean something that it doesn't mean, which is just, that's the game, right? So ultimately, we have this part of our selves, of our ego structure, that longs to seek out forbidden information. And that is because we long to always know the truth. And if there's ever anything that has ever happened that we don't know about, we ultimately will feel out of alignment with being able to know truth, because we can't know truth unless we know all perspectives of truth. And so this is a concept or a perspective or I don't know, something of like God consciousness that I personally haven't ever talked about before. I haven't heard anyone talk about, but in order to fully know that we know that we know what we know, we have to know for sure we've been able to see it from all perspectives. And the very concept of God consciousness is that it's ever evolving. And so that very act is a loop that is never feasible. Does that make sense? The ego's desire to identify itself, name itself, and put itself in a box is made impossible by the very nature of God, because God is creation. It is constantly creating anew. Every time it is defined, it wants to redefine itself. It is the very nature of bursting out of the shell and being born again. It is the very act of like the death and rebirth cycle. That's why nature has been the longest standing religion, if you will, because it's been here before us, and it's gonna do its thing to like shake the fleas off of her, to get people's consciousness in the right place, to realize that she's all that is, like the existence of this God consciousness through the evolution and various forms that it manifests and incarnates in. And the egos and the consciousnesses need and desire and delight. I don't want to always demonize things, the delight in naming things, because here's the other catch, and how this is just like, it is a cycle. It's a cycle that eats itself. It's not supposed to ever have an end. It's here so we can experience it. But without being able to name things, they can't ever exist. This is quantum physics broken down into really simple terms. Quantum physicists want to overcomplicate quantum physics so that you don't know the simplicity of it, so that you can create your own reality and you can't be controlled. Quantum physics is, you name something, it exists. And that seems backwards, right? Because you're like, well, something has to be there in order for me to name it. That's also why, my friend, I would like to perhaps introduce why manifestation seems particularly challenging for you. Because if you need something to be in front of you in order to name it, that very act, the reverse of that is how you manifest. And so if you stand on the belief structure that something isn't in your reality until it's physically in your reality, then your physical reality will always shape what you are creating, meaning your current situation will always have an influence to perpetuating what's coming next. In order to master your manifesting abilities and your magic and your mysteries that you came here, and the forbidden secrets of the earth that you came here to unfold and delight in with the rest of the universe and discover. So when you can tap into that energy of that hunger and that desire to name and also break out of the box of your own limitations, that is how I work. That's how my mind works. I had a woman once tell me that it seems like I'm on mushrooms all the time. And I'm just like, the second I come up with an idea, I already know how to execute the idea. And if the process of how to execute that idea does not turn me on enough, I will cull that idea. And I've already came up with a better idea on how to top the last idea that didn't excite me enough. And then I go through the process of what it would take, like from start to finish. My brain, like that, knows what, like I can see it from every single angle. And I didn't realize this for a long time, but I feel so tapped into this God consciousness that in an instant I can see how my influence of something could work out from all angles. Now, there is a component of this that by making a decision based on what you can see from your perspective and your perspective alone, even if it is this God consciousness perspective, because it's still, remind you, if you can see it from all perspectives, that's in the present moment. And moment by moment, things change. I started to talk about that earlier about how it's not defined. Like the end goal or your purpose or your mission is not defined. It is simply an adaptation to what is not in your control, and that is your delight. Now, ultimately, in a perfect world and in this new world we're all creating, and by we, I mean light workers and people who just realize this and understand that God is everything, we're building the world where we're living in harmony. So when we come and new incarnations drop into this planet Earth, and who knows what it's going to look like, that's the thing. I'm saying this from today's point of view because I only know what I have access to know today. And I only know what I have access to know as people are doing things and experiencing things. There's new experiences, and this consciousness is expanding through the lives of billions of people, trillions and gazillions of plants and species. That consciousness, they're all contributing to the same, like, we'll just call it a Google Drive, the Akashic records of consciousness, all that is and all that ever was, and the truth of that. And so the very act of trying to seek out and quest for knowledge that is so hidden, for example, like in the Akashic records, it's not hidden in plain sight, it's not hidden in physical form, which means you have to drop into your heart and experience this entire other world, which will, if you do it with a heart-centered intention, it will without doubt take you through processes of purification and initiation. For me, that looked like a Kundalini awakening, among so many other forms of initiation, not just ones that are known and have a lot of charge and are like reputable to be a purifying process. The Kundalini activation, please do not get me wrong, it is purifying of unconscious truths and attachments that are leached onto your chakra channels that you can't access. It is a divine, supernatural, Shakti, divine feminine power that burns and dissolves those attachments away so that you don't have to. And so it will change your entire life. And I mean, my God, I kind of captured my awakening as best I could. But it just changes a lot of things really quickly. And if you're unstable in your reality, meaning if there's not bridges of the things that you're experiencing spiritually to have a channel through in your life, conversations, if the people don't support what you're doing, your life can just take some uncomfortable turns outside of your control. But that's the very thing. Like everything that I'm going to be sharing on this channel, on my podcast, everything I talk about on TikTok, on Instagram, and I'm gaining a lot more direct language to make it make sense to you. And that's what I've been working so diligently over the last year, expressing my throat chakra, activating my throat chakra, allowing my higher self to speak over my tongue and to share what I know, what I knew when I knew it. This is a whole other thing to talk about too, right? But when I knew something is truth, I shared it in a way that I could so that I could feel it, how it felt when it came out and bounced off of the universe and came back to me. I had to feel it and experience it. So I would say things and fully commit to understanding them and live them and understand them through my lived experience, which, by the way, is Mystery School. So if you've heard me talk about Mystery School, if you see my stuff about Mystery School or all of those things, and I'm going to be doing some, not rebranding, but just more disclosure on what it is here soon. But it's really going to have to do with like Gnostic mysticism and magic, and obviously the moon work that I do and the womb work that I do in cyclical living. But it's so much deeper than that, and it's so fun and exciting, and I'm going to do it in the most fun and exciting way. It's not going to be the same boring blah. It's going to be mystic and magical and fun because we can. Why not? Like that's the whole point. And so experiencing it in my daily life, and if you step inside of Mystery School in any capacity in the Queendom, in Flow FM, which is my Moon Magic membership, we meet every single Wednesday for a mastermind, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We talk about all things moon magic, all things womb magic, business, spirituality, and it's just a really sacred sisterhood. It's a really sacred temple, and we talk about it in there. I talk about it in my one-on-one, like my VIP mentorships, my group programs, like everything, everywhere I talk about this. And it's all ultimately to heal the unconscious. And when I say heal the unconscious, I mean bring things into your conscious awareness, bring unconscious truths into your conscious awareness so that you can realize your gifts. And when we do that together, I've seen through my practice of working with women, when we do that together, it's in a really delightful way. You get to learn low vibrational lessons in a high vibrational format, which means through talking, through expressing your throat chakra, your higher self has more access to parts of your DNA to activate you, to download codes into your body that you need that will just kind of pop open and lock through divine knowings or understandings or revelations or epiphanies, or just walking through the grocery store and you're just like, oh, those types of moments to drop in and guide you every single moment of every single day. I am divinely guided. I do not plan any aspects of my life. I truly, intentionally try to plan. You know, it's funny. I made a mental note a while ago to make sure I cleaned this microphone off before I recorded videos because it's going to collect dog hair. I found myself at the end of this video realizing that I hadn't cleaned it off, but I redeemed myself. Ultimately, what I was saying is that I try to plan actively as little of my life as possible. I really enjoy living on the leading edge and experiencing and alchemizing with the unknown. That's where I find the most magic and mystery and miracles in life. And that's what I'm going to hopefully start helping you to realize that you have the potential to do in your life as well. So thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the things that I've talked about, let me know in the comments what's resonating, what you're moving through in your life. I'm going to be talking about a lot more things like this on this channel. So follow along here on YouTube, follow along on my podcast, TikTok, Instagram. I've got most of the things. So follow me wherever you spend most of your time, and let's have conversations daily about how to view your life from a higher self perspective so that you can start to implement more creativity, more joy, more creative systems and spiritual strategies in your life to just experience unlimited prosperity and abundance and resources and all of the good things that life has to offer. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I pointed like where they're going to be. I'm getting good at this. I'm proud of myself. So thanks again, and I will talk to you next time.